Is it going?
Yes.
Yeah. It's
Okay.
now.
I'm going to start. We talked about SGIP
Right.
from the beginning. We've been talking about it for a few months now. I want to give you an example of what I'm talking about and what we really should be trying to get the SGI to accommodate somehow. This will require a change in their policy. For everybody that's watching these videos, I know not all of you are SGI practicing members, okay? So this applies to all of you. It applies to everybody that has a sincere seeking spirit for the correct understanding of the correct teaching. So this is from my friend AJ, who I've been encouraging for, I think, a few years now. And AJ has a lot of personal issues, and I can relate to him because I was young once and I made a lot of mistakes, and I got hung up on a lot of crap. Not to the kind of circumstance that it's led to for him, but the world is filled with people that have this kind of issue, that want to advance, and they need the support of others to be able to stop their current situation and be able to have the courage to go forward and make the modifications in their life that are necessary to do human revolution. So it says, my buddy AJ, it says, Tom, how are you? Merry belated Christmas and Happy New Year to you. I just wanted you to know that I saw some of your most recent videos, and congrats with YouTube's organization of the videos for the channel. I've been worried about this guy for months. Last time I talked to him. He says, I am okay, but have still been struggling with my addictions and substance abuse. I'd have to admit that I have been half-stepping, and half-stepping is when you pretend that you've quit, but you really don't. Okay? Or you reduce your intake to make it appear that you're better. I lost or walked out of my place and looking for housing again. Rent is very expensive here in San Francisco, and it can be challenging, if impossible, to find a room below $1,000. And public assisted housing is very competitive and hard to get. I had some issues with my neighbors bothering me at my old building and decided to leave before finding a place, and I don't regret leaving. But I regret how I left the building because I had changed to move into the building in the first place, which means he must have gotten clean. I was also unfortunately arrested and now on probation for 2 years in San Mateo. I know I take full responsibility. You'd think I'd learned my lesson by now with drugs. No, it's called addiction, bro. It's a bitch.
Yes.
Okay? There's nothing wrong with you. It's that hard. I know I take full responsibility. You'd think I learned my lesson by now with the drugs. I have deep, complex karma. Understand that. And I know I need and can change and will flip, the circumstance. He says, I'm still chanting, not for as long as I should, but I am chanting and staying in tune with the channel. I still have my Gohonzon, and I've been trying to be careful with it while I'm transient. For now, I plan to enshrine it at my mom's house. She used to chant, but she thinks she's a Christian. She's Christian, but she thinks she's Christian, but she supports my practice. I'm in San Francisco, California, and I am grateful for the channel because I have damaged my relationship with my local Kaikon and members because of my addiction. I'm still welcome there, but I can feel the judgment of members because of my dumb actions on the property. Honestly, I got high a few times at or near the culture center, and the members and local members know that, and I be acted out a few times. I feel terrible about it, but I am still very grateful for my online activity with you. If it weren't for you, for the channel, I'd have known no real study at all. It has been a great guide for study of the Soka philosophy and Nichiren Buddhism. This guy is a Soka dude, man. All right? He says, I know I can't fool you. So, no, you can't. So best I be straight up about my progress. I'm going to challenge myself to chant for 3 hours at least one day of each week until I clear up this mess, because it's difficult for him to get out his Gohonzon and actually enshrine it to do that. He says, okay, but my apologies for the bad news, but I'm trying to be honest about the improvement I have to make in my life, and I definitely don't want to go back to jail, so I better shape up. I want a chance to get my job back somehow as well. My charges don't allow me to work with my company anymore. I was doing DoorDash. It did not make much, but it was something I enjoyed. Okay, I'm going to listen to a video of yours for a bit, and then I'm going to do Gongyo. He comes back. He says, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you forgot to answer my question. You said you were going to come back to it, but never did. I must have missed your response if you did. To remind you, my question and statement was, if I can't chant to the SGI Nichikan Gohonzon, is it wrong to chant to a Gohonzon from another Nichiren sect? And can or will you receive benefit if you were to? Because, for example, Nichiren Shoshu and SGI have their strict conditions and requirements that you must complete before they give you a Gohonzon. I just think that the Gohonzon should be more accessible to people who can't do meetings or who can't do meetings or that can meet in person or travel to a temple. They don't have the mobility to do all activities. He's saying, like my situation with my damaged relationship with my local members, I lost my Gohonzon and I don't want to go through the bureaucracy of SGI USA standards for the replacement, so I chose eBay instead. Bad choice, but I understand why you made the choice. eBay has Gohonzons from all three sects to sell online, and they do. You all know that, right? You can buy a Gohonzon. Did you know that?
It's a commodity like anything
It
else.
is, it is.
Okay.
An Memorial Gohonzon costs $175 on eBay.
Until now?
Right now, you could go on eBay right now, look up. Yeah, you can. There again, there are people that have gone Titan, and they know there's a market for the Gohonzon, and they know that they sell them. Okay. You weren't aware of that? No, that's you're taking on somebody else's karma. That's a Titan person that's providing you with that Gohonzon. And that's the mechanism that's why, again, SGI has to loosen up on this. Okay, that you should be able to give your Gohonzon from Nichiren Shu or from wherever else that you've gotten. You can, right now on the internet, you can get a fully digital, high-resolution copy of the Nichikan Gohonzon that doesn't look any different other than not having the, what do they call that? The decorative framing, right. But as far as the Gohonzon itself, it is identical because somebody took a Gohonzon they received from SGI and photocopied it. Didn't just photocopy it. It's a there's no difference between the two other than where they came from, frankly speaking. And that's a very confusing point for me when I get asked this question because it's not the first person that's asked me this question. Okay, I don't know what to do because I don't have an SGI Gohonzon and I live so far away. There's no way for me to acclimate myself into a group for them to know or trust me enough. And so then I'm like, what do you do in that situation? And, from the 50s on, SGI's always been about meetings, one-to-one dialogue. Okay, but you can one-to-one dialogue on Zoom now. And the digital age has occurred, which was my whole point. My kids are not limited to interacting one-on-one with anybody to consider them best friends, close friends, and so forth. So he says, let me go back. Like my situation with my damaged relationship with my local members, I lost my Gohonzon and I didn't want to go through the bureaucracy of SGI USA standards for the replacement, so I chose eBay instead. By the way, that process differs with each organization everywhere. Every organization is different in how strict they are about letting you receive Gohonzon. Wow. When I'm talking about local entities. It's different. The people in LA have a different attitude than the people in Chicago, have a different attitude than the people in Dallas. I can tell you that. Yes. It's not, there's no hard and firm thing. It's really, can you get to the right place to be able to be around people that have the compassion to help you? He's saying, eBay has Gohonzons from all three sects for sale online. I think it's an option. In other words, you can get a Nichiren Shoshu, a Soka Gakkai, or a Nichiren Shu Gohonzon on eBay. I think it's an option worthwhile if you can't do meetings for whatever reason and you need a Gohonzon. I just don't understand the formality of the SGI. If we've broken away from the priesthood's ceremony and tradition anyway, please answer my statement / question when you can on and have time on video, because I'm certain that not all your viewers are Soka members. I'm sure there are Shoshu and Shu members listening to you as well. Okay, I'm going to do Gongyo and get back to me when you have the opportunity. Best wishes from the Bay Area. Your home, State of the Union, signed with love and respect, AJ. He says, P.S. I confess, since I damaged my relationship with the local SGI members at the Culture Center, I've been visiting the Shoshu's temple because he has no place else to go, although it's kind of far as an alternative. I also have changed and am doing my own format of Gongyo. Sometimes that includes the B section of Gongyo, which has been omitted by the Soka Gakkai. I don't do Shoshu's full Gongyo often, but I am reciting the entire 16th chapter as my own, and the portion of chapter 2, of course. I thought I should share that with you to get your opinion or ideas about it. I do the SGI format when I'm in a rush. Thanks again, Tom, for being there for me, because I don't have many valuable relationships at all in my life, so I really do appreciate and feel so close to you, even though I know you're across the ocean. Okay, so AJ, I actually, again, this whole conversation I'm having is with you in mind, because I know you're not the Lone Ranger. I know you're not the only one, and I know how political getting a Gohonzon can be. Yeah. Even here in Taiwan, I've been practicing 50 years. Okay, I have to get checked out before I can receive Gohonzon. Okay, my length of membership, my positions in the organization, they don't mean anything here. Now, I could go somewhere else and it'd be an automatic. I guarantee you, where did I get that Ogatagi Gohonzon? In Dallas. Or pardon me, in Chicago. And then the Omamori in Dallas, okay? And they weren't either, none of it was stuff that I asked for. It was stuff that I was given. I didn't want to give up my Nitatsu Shonen Gohonzon. Frankly, when I saw what a Nikken Shonen Gohonzon looked like, nobody had said anything about Nikken in a bad way. He came to America for a big tour and bestowed Ogatagi Gohonzons on a lot of people. I was somebody that was fortunate enough to be able to get one. But the reality is that I didn't like the way it looked. And, I said, this is an angry Gohonzon. I mean, if you know a Nitatsu Gohonzon, it's like so peaceful and calming. It was what I had raised myself on, right? So it was very difficult. And I really made the determination that I was going to chant Daimoku to this Gohonzon that they were sticking me with, because I didn't have a choice. I really didn't have a choice. To not take it would have been a faux pas, like beyond faux pas. It's like, I don't want your Nikken Gohonzon. Okay, 5 years later, everybody's saying, return your Nikken Gohonzon. And I went, yeah, but my prayer was that I'd chant to that Nikken Gohonzon until I did my human revolution. I wanted that to change. Okay, so I didn't accept the reality that I was faced with. I made the determination that I was going to change the reality that I was faced with. All right, and we're in a transition period right now, because President Ikeda just died 6 weeks ago. Okay, and the leadership of the Gakkai has been actually kind of through other people than himself in these last 10 or 11 years, because I know he's physically not been able to get out and be among the people. Right. All right. Now, what I will imagine is going to happen, and I could be completely wrong about this, but I would imagine that there's going to be a lot of conversation about Daisaku Ikeda for a long time now. all right? And in reality, we cannot deify President Ikeda because he's finally passed away, okay? Just as we didn't deify Josei Toda and we didn't deify Tanesa Buromakaguchi. We're all human beings. Nichiren Daishonin was no different than any individual around this table, myself included, AJ included, okay? We're all human beings. We're all trying to change our karma. We all have been fortunate enough to find a mechanism to accomplish that in Nichiren Buddhism and to be fortunate enough to not be confused about the correct teaching, or at least I'm not, and that's why I'm trying to continue with what I know or what I was taught, because this worked very, very well in my life, and I just wanted to be available, this understanding. So, when it comes to revering Gohonzons other than the SGI's Gohonzon, this is really a very personal choice. This is not something that I have a right to tell you yes or no about. If it were me, I would not chant to a Nichiren Shu Gohonzon, regardless, okay? Personally, I'd be more inclined to go do if I couldn't get the SGI to cooperate with me, I'd go for the digital reproduction of the Nichikan Gohonzon and protect it with my life and chant Daimoku that I was going to replace it with an SGI Gohonzon that's identical to it. Because that's your determination. And if you have that determination about receiving Gohonzon and having the correct object of devotion, your prayer must be answered. It will be answered. That, or you're really not doing that. You're really not going to the extent that you need to be. Now, AJ, I would also say part of what you just wrote to me is that you're welcome there. They don't keep you from being there, but then you feel you're being judged. Well, if you behaved in a way that people might have judged you one way, then you behave in a different way, so they change their opinion. It's up to you to go back to that kaikan and the people that have strained feelings about you, okay? Because you've already admitted it was your action. Okay? And when you're high, you're not really responsible. You're not behaving in the way that you would were you not. Okay? So you need to get around people and be straight and let them see the person that I know, that I'm not, I'm rooting for you all the way, brother, and I'm trying to make this change for everybody. The SGI should be able to have a mechanism that allows people to receive the Gohonzon of the SGI without having no other solution than to have to resort to a digital copy or something off of eBay. There should be enough compassion within the organization to know there are a lot of us that did drugs before. Maybe nobody at this table. I sure have. Okay? I've done a lot. Okay? That's why I call myself an evil person all the time. Anybody can transform. Anybody can, overcome the karmic hindrances they've created for themselves, okay? And I would not, AJ, chant to your Gohonzon. Don't worry about de-enshrining it. You can do whatever you need to do. That's your decision. But, what you really need to do is you need to go back to a community center so that you have something to rebound off of. You went there and you did the right thing. You tried to ask the right people. You've done everything you can to do it the right way. You can't really come back acknowledging you're just uncomfortable about having to be responsible for who you are. Yes. Okay? You have to man up about who you are. That's part of human revolution. It doesn't matter when I say man up, woman up, whatever you want to call it, human being it up. Okay? Each human being has to be responsible for who they are. Okay? Because you won't change if you don't take on the responsibility of knowing that you made the causes to create that. As long as you can blame other people, you will, and you will not ever overcome your problem. Yeah. Overcoming the obstacles in your life that you want to be different can only be accomplished if you'll be responsible for believing the teaching. And the teaching says it's not anything outside of you. Okay? We all have dependent origination relationships with other living beings. We all have different karmas. We all have Nam Myoho Renge Kyo as the original state of life, as does everything. Okay? So it's not like we're not connected. We're all absolutely connected. You're all connected to Nichiren Daishonin personally. Okay? The teacher of the original state is the original teacher. Okay? There's no possible way for you to not have a relationship with the original teacher. Okay? Your actions demonstrate that. Okay? It's not something that somebody had to award you with a badge or a position or permission. Okay? I don't read anywhere in the Gosho where the Daishonin talks about, and make sure you get permission. Can anybody correct me? Can anybody add some? Have you ever heard it in a Gosho? And make sure you get permission. No. He teaches you how to be brave. He teaches you how to go upstream, not downstream. He tells you how to change poison into medicine. Okay? That's what this is all about. That's what President Ikeda devoted his life to. And here's where we're lucky. Because yes, he's gone, been gone 6 weeks. But don't forget, don't be so hung up on who he was as much as you should be hung up on what he did, what he accomplished. Yes. We're going to read the Risho on Kokoran. That's what this Gosho is about, right? It's on embracing the correct teaching for the pacification of the land. Okay, now what's the basis of the Risho on Kokoran? Yeah, I'm going to go into it in a second by reading you all the same definitions I have before. But I just want to ask, what's the basis of the Risho on Kokoran? The reality that he came to the epiphany that after he studied to find out why these disasters were occurring, even though he was a good Buddhist, and Buddhism, all the schools are saying that there are means to be saved. Okay, but for some reason, the environment is at war, and there's all kinds of discord, and there's all kinds of natural disasters. So what was it that he did in order to find the solution? It's exactly what I've had to do. You want to know why I know so much about the Gosho? I had to figure out why my life changed when I had already had it made. Okay? It comes from adversity. It comes from having to find the correct answer. The correct answer only lies in the teaching. Okay? The fifth 500-year period had just occurred. Everybody was still living in the teaching of the the former and the middle day of the law. They weren't teaching. There was no practice specifically for the latter day of the law, but the Lotus Sutra had predicted that one would come about. And it was only through study, is my point, that we're able to make the discernments necessary to advance on our own. Okay? Now, if you really think you can advance just by listening to somebody else talk, you might as well be a Nichiren Shoshu member, because that's exactly what the deal is with them. You go to an Oko, you don't need to study the Gosho. That's too hard. That's really our job, the priests tell them in Nichiren Shoshu, if you didn't know that. Okay? So, the whole point is that all of us that started with the Soka Gakkai and have always practiced Soka Gakkai, we've never been Hokeiko. Wike, that's the lay organization of Nichiren Shoshu. We've never been Hokeiko. We've been something different than that all along, from day one. Because Teneso Brahma Akaguchi did things nobody in Nichiren Shoshu did. Nobody in Nichiren Shu had ever done. Okay? None of this outbound, take Daishonin literally from the Gosho, and don't base it on all this former and the middle day teaching of Shakyamuni. Okay? And get your head straight. That's why Nichiren Shoshu is called Orthodox Nichiren, because Nikko is the one that started that school. There were no Nichiren schools at the time of Nichiren's living. Right. You understand all that, right? Okay? So, That's what this whole deal has been about. President Ikeda's real legacy, I think, will be that. Because he spoke to people in a circumstance that was in accord with the time, and the time will change. But the point is that the building blocks to accommodate that time changing have already been left for us. Okay? The Gosho Translation Committee was made up of some really capable people. Okay? This Gosho itself for translation came from High Priest Hori to President Toda. Okay, so it's not something that the Soka Gakkai made up. It was actually something that was done in concert with Nichiren Shoshu, the high priest that had resigned once, had to come back and finally quit again. Okay, I think that's kind of significant of Vice President or of High Priest Hori. So, all in all, from this point on, after this particular last chapter of Volume 7, I'm not going to be going back and reading Daisaku Ikeda to you, because I know everybody else will be. Okay, I'm going to read from my own mind things that can only be read from your own mind. And then hopefully that triggers you guys to read them from your own mind. I'm not telling anybody to listen to what I say and that I'm the absolute. It's just that I waited. President Ikeda is gone now. No one's done the orally transmitted teachings. Reading the orally transmitted teachings changed my life. It answered all the questions that nobody could answer. Nobody would answer. Okay? Let me know why. Okay? It's important for you to understand what the orally transmitted teachings contain, or Nico and IKKO wouldn't have saved them all. The Daishonin wouldn't have put his stamp on them, okay, as a teaching. I mean, how did the Daishonin, I say it again, how did the Daishonin come up with Nam-myoho Renge-kyo? By mastering all the other school's teachings, all the other sutras. By knowing what they said and being able to discern, okay, it's all in the Lotus Sutra. But it's not all in the Lotus Sutra. It's really only in the 16th chapter of the Lotus Sutra. So it's something outside of the Lotus Sutra. That's a provisional teaching now. We're in the 5th 500-year period. These were revolutionary declarations that he made to himself, and then it was up to him to try and go out and help people understand why he was saying what he was saying. Yes. Okay? So that's what we should all do. Okay, everybody knows what Hoshaku Kimpan is? It's attaining Buddhahood in your present form, right? It's casting off the transient and revealing the true. What are you truly? Are you just members, or are you teachers of the law? Only you can answer that. I can't answer that. That's a determination you make with your own actions and how you utilize what we've been left to advance with. Okay? So, first we're going to go to on establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land, the definition from the dictionary. By the way, what was the last Gosho, or what was the last treatise teaching that the Daishonin lectured on prior to his death? Prior to his death, after he had gone to the hot springs and he knew he was going to die, he knew he had to do the transfer document and all that to Nico. But what was the thing that he was encouraging the people around him to make sure that they remembered and that they knew? It was this Gosho. It was this Gosho. Now, what's the timeline between the advent of the circumstance that allows for this Gosho and this Gosho? Okay, what's the birthday of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo? April 28th, 1253, right? This Gosho wasn't written in classical Chinese as a remonstrative document to the government until 1260, 7 years later. And I'm going to read you. He studied. He went to go study and find out what was going on, and that's why we're here right now. So our mission of studying together has been an important one. We didn't plan on sharing it with anybody but ourselves.
Yeah.
It's thanks to that. That's how we know Gene, because Gene, you saw this from Hawaii, not from here. Okay? So there we go. Now, listen, I'm going. All right. On establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land from the dictionary on page 479, abbreviated as On Establishing the Correct Teaching, one of Nichiren's 5 or 10 major writings. Nichiren submitted this treatise to Hojo Tokiyori, the retired regent, but still the most powerful figure in Japan's ruling clan, through the offices of the shogunate official Iedoya Mitsunori. On the 16th day of the 7th month in 1260. Around the 1250s, Kamakura and Japan as a whole had experienced a series of floods and landslides, epidemics and famine, and an earthquake of unprecedented scale. In 1257, in an effort to clarify the fundamental causes of these disasters, Nichiren visited Jisho Temple at Iwamoto in Suruga province in 1258. Okay, 2 years prior to the point that he would have. Okay, so all of this came out after he had been an acolyte for the age of 16 and gone off and all that stuff. Okay, so around the 1250s, Kamakura and Japan as a whole had experienced. In an effort to clarify the fundamental cause of those disasters, Nichiren visited Jisho Temple at Iwatomo in Suruga province in 1258 to do research in its sutra library in preparation for writing this treatise. As a result, he found ample documentary support for his arguments in such sutras as the Benevolent King's Medicine Master Great Collection and Golden Light Sutra, which he's going to quote in here, right, as he's talking to the host to the guest. The treatise begins by depicting the misery caused by the frequent disasters raging Japan, and regards the fact that the whole nation is turning against the correct teaching as a major factor responsible for the unprecedented disasters. Nichiren explains that the people should abandon their faith in erroneous teachings. Abandon their faith in erroneous teachings. That means also erroneous teachings from erroneous Nichiren schools, in my opinion now. It's Mappo. Nichiren explains that the people should abandon their faith in erroneous teachings and embrace the correct teaching, asserting that this is the basis for establishing a peaceful land. On establishing the correct teaching was written in classical Chinese and consists of a dialogue between a host and a visitor. It is generally considered that the host represents Nichiren and the visitor Hojo Tokiyori. In this treatise, Nichiren presents numerous scriptural references to the disasters that will befall a nation that follows incorrect teachings. He makes an unsparing criticism of the Pure Land teachings of Honen. The Medicine Master Sutra lists the 7 disasters, of which Nichiren points out that 5 have already occurred. The remaining 2, internal strife and foreign invasion, will happen without fail, he says, if the rulers continue to support erroneous doctrines. Later, these prophecies were fulfilled when Hojo Tokisuke revolted against his younger half-brother, Regent Hojo Tokemune, in the 2nd month of 1272, and when the Mongol forces attacked Japan twice in 1274 and 1281. During the years he resided at Minobu, Nichiren created an expanded version of this treatise by adding scriptural passages, but the keynote remained the same as in the 1260 version. In the 9th month of 1282, shortly before his death, Nichiren lectured on this treatise to his followers. The attention he continued to give it long after it was submitted, including making several copies and having his disciple Nico copy it also, demonstrates the importance he attached to this work, and he intended for future generations and that he intended it for future generations as well as his contemporaries. So now I'll go to the background on the Gosho from page 26 on volume 1 of the writings of Nichiren Daishonin. It says, background, on the 28th day of the 4th month, 1253, and this explains how this all came about, right? On what's the 28th day of the 4th month in 1253? Nichiren Daishonin established the teaching of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo at Seichoji Temple in his native Awa, his native province of Awa, and later he returned to Kamakura, the seat of the military government, to begin propagation. Now, what was one of the reasons why he went to Kamakura? Because he gave that lecture that night when he introduced Nam-myoho Renge-kyo and really upset some Nimbutsu powerful people, and this one of these Hojo dudes wanted him killed. And so that's why Sairenbo got him out with the help of who? There are Goshos on him. Come on. I can't think of them either. His two friends, his two fellow young priests. Okay, but that's why he left and went to Kamakura, because he had to get out of there. The heat was on, because he had pronounced Nam-myoho Renge-kyo as a new manner of understanding. In examining the records, we find that in those days the era names were changed frequently. In the year 1253, it was the Kensho era. 3 years later, in 1256, the era name was changed to Kogen, and the next year to Shoka. Then 2 years later, in 1259, it was changed to Shogun. The following year, it was Bunno. The next year after that, it was Kocho. He says, in the 5 years from 1256 to 1261, the era name changed 5 times. An era name was usually changed only on the occasion of a new emperor, or when some natural disaster of severe proportions occurred. The frequency of these changes attests to the magnitude of the disasters that struck Japan during this period. Soon after the Daishonin's arrival, Kamakura and the country as a whole faced a series of disasters and conflicts that served to emphasize his conviction that the latter day of the law had indeed been entered upon. On the 6th day of the 8th month of 1256, torrential rainstorms caused floods and landslides, destroying crops and devastating much of Kamakura. In the 9th month of the same year, an epidemic swept through the city, taking many lives. During the 5th, 8th, and 11th months of 1257, violent earthquakes rocked the city, and the 6th and 7th months witnessed a disastrous drought. Most frightful of all was an earthquake of unprecedented scale that occurred on the 23rd day of the 8th month. The year 1258 witnessed no lessening of natural calamities. The 8th month saw storms destroy crops throughout the nation, and floods in Kamakura drowned numerous people. In the 10th month of the same year, Kamakura was visited by heavy rains and severe floods. In the first month of 1258, fires consumed Jinfuku-ji Temple, and in 1259, epidemics and famine were rampant, and violent rainstorm decimated crops. Nichiren Daishonin sought answers to the cause of these disasters in the scriptural writings of Buddhism. That's what we also do. In an effort to clarify it, he went to Jisoji Temple in Iwamoto in Soruga province, and he stayed there from 1258 through the middle of 1260. So he had just come back from that study when he gave that lecture, when they had to smuggle him out of Awa, and he ended up going to Kamakura as a major temple of the Tendai school. Okay, so Jishoji was a Tendai school. Okay, so it would have had Tendai's Makashikan kind of a outlook on the teachings of Buddhism. As a major temple of the Tendai school in eastern Japan, Jishoji housed many important sutras in its sutra library, much more than Seichoji might have. And Seichoji may have already become Nimbutsu by that time. The Daishonin pored over them all. As a result, Nichiren Daishonin found evidence for his theory in such sutras as the Benevolent King's Medicine Master, Great Collection, and Golden Light. He quoted passages from these sutras in the present text. On establishing the correct teaching of For the Peace of the Land, chronologically the first of his 5 major works. And with me reading this, if you include the selection of time, we've done them all. The work was originally written in classical Chinese and submitted to Hojo Tokiyori through the offices of high-ranking government official Yadoya Mitsunori on the 16th day of the 7th month of the first year of Bunno. Tokiyori was then living in retirement, but he was still the most influential member of the ruling Hojo clan. The work occasioned no immediate reaction, and no official response was made to the Daishonin, although we know that somebody that was there at SHOG was mad enough to want him dead. But the members of the government were incensed at the rationale but unrelenting attack that work made on the Pure Land teachings of Honen, Nimbutsu, Amida, and his followers. Government officials who were Pure Land followers apparently encouraged an attack made on the Daishonin's dwelling at Matsubagayatsu in Kamakura on the 27th day of the 8th month. The Daishonin narrowly escaped and made his way to the province of Shimosa to stay at the home of a follower. He returned to Kamakura early in the following year, 1261. He remained continually under the threat of persecution and was summarily banished to Izu on the 12th day of the 5th month of the same year. So he was banished to exile within like 15 months of having talked about Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. The work consists of a dialogue between a host and a visitor. The host represents Nichiren Daishonin, and the visitor, it is thought, represents Hojo Tokiyori. At the outset, the host lays the blame for the disasters that have befallen the country on the belief in an erroneous religion. The Pure Land teachings of Honen. Presented are numerous scriptural references to disasters that will befall a nation that follows false teachings. The Daishonin puts particular emphasis on a passage in the Medicine Master Sutra that describes 7 types of disasters that will strike a nation. Of these calamities, he points out 5 have already occurred. The 2 calamity of invasion from foreign lands and the calamity of revolt within one's own domain have yet to occur, he said. The Daishonin cautions that these will come about if the doctrines of the Lotus Sutra are not followed. Later, the prophecies of internal strife and foreign invasion were fulfilled when Hojo Tokisuke revolted against his younger half-brother, Regent Hojo Tokimune, in 1272, and when the Mongols attacked Japan twice in 1274 and 1281. In terms of its view of the relationship between the people's religious beliefs and the realization of a peaceful society, on establishing the correct teaching holds an important position in Nichiren Daishonin's writings. The Daishonin lived at a time of authoritarian government, of which there are many in the world right now. And he probably felt that although an appeal to the most powerful members of the government, through an appeal to the most powerful members of the government, he could help bring about a reformation of society. That his appeal was ignored only spurred his unremitting effort to propagate his teaching for the peace of the land of society, a task he would pursue to the end of his life. Okay, so I'm not going to give up on trying to get the Soka Gakkai to change. I hope you'll join me.
Yes.
All right? And it's not because there's something wrong with them. It's because people need compassion and mercy to be brought back in. And it's a new time. It's time for us to all be President Ikeda. It's time for all of us to be teachers. We have to master the teaching in order to be able to teach it properly. We can't add our own.
Yeah.
Okay? So that's why I'm going to just keep teaching.
Yes.
All right? That's what I'm going to do. I'm too old to start this thing. I'm going to ask that you guys start it. I'll wait to see if anybody does. I will be chanting to support you. Okay, so going to page 6 of the writings of Nichiren Daishonin, page, this, by the way, this is sometimes called the 10 questions and 9 answers Gosho, I guess, from the olden days. So this is actually broken into 10 9 questions and answers, and one more question which isn't answered because by then he's won over the guest, and the guest makes a question that says, why don't we all? Okay. So, all right. So we start on page 6. On establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land. Once there was a traveler who spoke these words in sorrow to his host. This is the first question. In recent years, this is the guest asking this question. In recent years, there have been unusual disturbances in the heavens, strange occurrences on earth. Famine and pestilence, all affecting every corner of the empire and spreading throughout the land. Kind of sounds like now. Oxen and horses lie dead in the streets, and the bones of the stricken crowd the highways. Over half the population has already been carried off by death, and there is hardly a single person who does not grieve. All the while, some put their whole faith in the sharp sword of the Buddha Amida and intone the name of this lord of the western land. Others believe that hearing the name of the Buddha medicine master will heal all ills and recite the sutra that describes this thus come one of the eastern region. Some put their trust in the passage of the Lotus Sutra that says his illness will be wiped out and he will know neither old age nor death. Pay homage to the wonderful words of that sutra. Others relying upon the sutra passage that reads, the 7 disasters will instantly vanish and the 7 blessings will instantly appear. Conduct ceremonies at which 100 priests expound the sutra at 100 preaching platforms. There are those who follow the esoteric teachings of the True Word School and conduct rituals in which they fill 5 jars with water, and others who devote themselves entirely to seated meditation and try to perceive the emptiness of all phenomena as clearly as the moon. Some write out the names of the 7 guardian spirits and paste them on 1,000 gates. Others paint pictures of the 5 mighty bodhisattvas and hang them over 10,000 thresholds. And still others pray to the heavenly gods and earthly deities in ceremonies conducted at the 4 corners of the capital and on the 4 boundaries of the nation, taking pity on the plight of the common people. The rulers carry out government on the national and local levels in a benevolent manner. But despite all these efforts, they merely exhaust themselves in vain. Famine and epidemics rage more fiercely than ever. Beggars are everywhere in sight, and scenes of death fill our eyes. Corpses pile up in mounds like observation platforms, and dead bodies lie side by side like planks on a bridge. If we look about, we find that the sun and moon continue to move in their accustomed orbits, and the 5 planets follow the proper course. The 3 treasures of Buddhism continue to exist, and the period of 100 reigns has not yet expired. Then why is it that the world has already fallen into decline, and that the laws of the state have come to an end? What is wrong? What error has been committed? The host then spoke. I have been brooding alone upon this matter, indignant in my heart, but now that you have come, we can lament together. Let us discuss the question at length. Discuss the question at length. When a man leaves family life and enters the Buddhist way, it is because he hopes to attain Buddhahood through the teachings of the Buddha. But attempts now to move the gods fail to have any effect, and appeals to the power of the Buddhas produces no results. When I observe carefully the state of the world today, I see people who give way to doubt because of the lack of understanding on the part of eminent priests. They're not being taught properly. Their expectations are not correct expectations to have. They look up at the heavens and mouth their resentment, or gaze down at the earth and sink into deep despair. I have pondered the matter carefully with what limited resources I possess, and I have looked a little at the scriptures for an answer. The people of today all turn their backs upon what is right. To a person, they give their allegiance to evil. This is the reason that the benevolent deities have abandoned the nation and departed together, that sages leave and do not return. And instead, devils and demons come and disasters and calamities occur. I cannot keep silent on this matter. I cannot suppress my fears. The guest said, question 2. These disasters that befall the empire, these calamities of the nation, I am not the only one pained by them. The whole populace is weighed down with sorrow. Now I have been privileged to enter the orchid room and listen to these enlightening words of yours. You speak of the gods and sages taking leave and of disasters and calamities arising in sequence. Upon what sutras do you base your views? Could you describe for me the passages of proof? The answer to question 2. The host said, there are numerous passages that could be cited and a wide variety of proofs. For example, in the Golden Light Sutra, we read that the 4 heavenly kings and the Buddha, said to the Buddha, though this sutra exists in the nation, its ruler has never allowed it to be propagated. In his heart, he turns away from it, and he takes no pleasure in hearing its teachings. He neither makes offerings to it, honors it, nor praises it. He's talking about the Lotus Sutra now. Nor is he willing to honor or make offerings to the 4 kinds of Buddhists who embrace the sutra. In the end, he makes it impossible for us and the other countless heavenly beings who are our followers to hear this profound and wonderful teaching. He deprives us of the sweet dew of its words and cuts us off from the flow of the correct teaching, so that our majesty and strength are drained away. Thus the number of beings who occupy the evil paths increases, and the number who dwell in the human and heavenly realms decreases. People fall into the river of the sufferings of birth and death and turn their backs on the road to nirvana. World-honored one, we, the 4 heavenly kings, as well as our various followers and the yakshas and other beings observing the state of affairs, have decided to abandon this nation, for we have no heart to protect it. And it is not we alone who cast aside this ruler. All the great benevolent deities who guard and watch over the countless different regions of the country will also invariably reject him. And once we and the others abandon and desert this nation, then many different types of disasters will occur in the country, and the ruler will fall from power. Not a single person in the entire population will possess a heart of goodness. There will be nothing but binding and enslaving, killing and injuring, anger and contention. People will slander each other or fawn upon one another, and the laws will be twisted until even the innocent are made to suffer. Pestilence will become rampant. Comets will appear again and again. 2 suns will come forth side by side, and eclipses will occur with unaccustomed frequency. Black arcs and white arcs will span the skies as harbingers of ill fortune. Stars will fall. The earth will shake, and noises will issue from the wells. Torrential rains of violent winds will come out of season. Famine will constantly occur, and grains and fruits will not ripen. Marauders from other regions will invade and plunder the nation, and people will suffer all manner of pain and affliction, and no place will exist where one may live in safety. Continue on page 8, second paragraph. The Great Collection Sutra says, this is still the host answering the guest's question. Second question, which you can imagine that the guest is suddenly going now, whew, I'm part of the upper class. I think you'd be stepping on my toes, bro. The Great Collection Sutra says when the teachings of the Buddha truly become obscured and lost, then people will let their beards, hair, and fingernails grow long, and the laws of the world will be forgotten and ignored. At that time, loud noises will sound in the air, and the earth will shake. Everything in the world will begin to move as though it were a water wheel. City walls will split and tumble, and all houses and dwellings will collapse. Roots, branches, leaves. By the way, this is from the Great Collection Sutra. Okay, he's not saying this is what's going to happen. He's saying the Great Collection Sutra says this is what's going to happen if you practice erroneous teachings. He says, city walls will split, and tumble, and all houses and dwellings will collapse. Roots, branches, leaves, petals, and fruits will lose their medicinal properties. With the exception of the heavens of purity, all the regions of the world of desire will become deprived of the 7 flavors and the 3 kinds of vitality, until not a trace of them remains anymore. All the good discourses that lead people to emancipation will at this time disappear. The flowers and fruits that grow in the earth will become few and will lose their flavor and sweetness. The wells, springs, and ponds will all go dry. The land everywhere will turn brackish and will crack open and warp into hillocks and gullies. All the mountains will be swept by fire, and the heavenly beings and dragons will no longer send down rain. The seedlings of the crops will all wither and die. All the living plants will perish, and even the weeds will cease to grow anymore. Dust will rain down until it is Dust will rain down until all is darkness, and the sun and moon no longer shed their light. All the 4 directions will be afflicted. Second column, page 8. All the 4 directions will be afflicted by drought, and evil omens will appear again and again. The 10 evil acts will increase greatly, particularly greed, anger, and foolishness. And people will think no more of their fathers and mothers than does the roe deer. Living beings will decline in numbers and longevity, physical strength, dignity, and enjoyment. They will become estranged from the delights of the human and heavenly realms, and will fall into the paths of evil. The wicked rulers and monks who perform these 10 evil acts will curse and destroy my correct teaching and make it difficult for those in the human and heavenly realms to stay there. At that time, the benevolent deities and heavenly kings who would ordinarily take pity on living beings will abandon this pure and evil nation, and all will make their way to other regions. The Benevolent King Sutra states, when a nation becomes disordered, it is the spirits that first show signs of rampancy, but the spirits because the spirits become rampant, all the people of the nation become disordered. Invaders come to plunder the country, and the common people face annihilation. The ruler, the high ministers, the crown prince, the other princes, and 100 officials all quarrel with one another over right and wrong. Heaven and earth manifest prodigies and strange occurrences, and the 28 constellations, the stars, and the sun and the moon appear at irregular times and in irregular positions, and numerous outflows rise up. Top of page 9. The same sutra also states, and now we're still on the Great Collection Sutra here. The same sutra also states, now when I use the 5 types of vision to clearly perceive the 3 existences, I see that their past existences I see in their past existences all the rulers served 500 Buddhas, and that this is the reason that they were able to become emperors and sovereigns. And that is also the reason that all the various sages and arhats are born in their nations and bring great benefits. But if a time should come when the good fortune of these rulers runs out, then all the sages will abandon them and depart. Once the sages have departed, then the 7 disasters are certain to arise. The Medicine Master Sutra states, so he's going on to another different source of answer to the question. The Medicine Master Sutra states, if disasters and calamities should befall members of the ruling Kshatriya class and anointed kings, such disasters will be as follows: the calamity of disease and pestilence among the populace, the calamity of invasion from foreign lands, the calamity of revolt within one's own domain, the calamity of irregularities and strange occurrences among the stars and constellations, the calamity of eclipses of the sun and the moon, the calamity of the unseasonable wind and rain, the calamity of rain that fails to fall even when the season for it has come and gone. In the Benevolent King Sutra, you can see he studied what we were just talking about from that temple, where they had the great all those doctrinal theses. In the Benevolent King Sutra, the Buddha addresses King Prasenajit with these words, Great King, the region where my teachings now hold sway consists of 1 billion Sumeru worlds with 1 billion suns and moons. Each of these Sumeru worlds comprises 4 continents. In the southern continent of Jampadvipa, there are 16 great states, 500 middle-sized states, and 10,000 small states. In these states, 7 types of fearful disasters may occur. All the rulers of these states agree that these are indeed disasters. What then are these disasters? That are mentioned in the Benevolent King Sutra. When the sun and the moon depart from the regular courses, when the seasons come in the wrong order, when a red sun or a black sun appears. This has happened recently in other places right now. When their red suns or black suns appear, when 2, 3, 4, or 5 suns appear at the same time, when the sun is eclipsed and loses its light, or when 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 coronas appear around the sun, this is the first disaster. When the 28 constellations do not move in their regular courses, when the metal star, the boom star, the wheel star, the demon star, the fire star, the water star, the wind star, the ladle star, the southern dipper, and the northern dipper, the great stars of the 5 garrisons, and all the many stars that govern the ruler, the 3 high ministers, and the 100 officials, when each of these stars manifests some peculiar behavior, this is the second disaster. When huge fires consume the nation, when the people are all burned to death, when there are outbreaks of demon fire, dragon fire, heavenly fire, mountain god fire, human fire. By the way, you can tell this is coming from a sutra because these are the way sutras are written. Very repetitiously, as when we've read the Lotus Sutra. Remember, we'll be doing that again. You'll have to sit through these long lists. When the huge fires consume the nation, all the people are all burned to death, or when there are outbreaks of demon fire, dragon fire, heavenly fire, mountain god fire, human fire, tree fire, or bandits fire. When these prodigies appear, this is the third disaster. When the huge floods drown the population, when the seasons come out of order, when there is rain in winter, snow in summer, thunder and lightning in winter, and ice, frost, and hail in the 6th month, the middle of summer, when red, black, or green rain falls, when mountains of dirt and stones come raining down, or when it rains dust, sand, or gravel, when the rivers and streams run backward, when mountains are afloat and boulders are washed away, when freakish happenings of this kind occur. This is the 4th disaster. When huge winds blow the people to their death, and the lands, the mountains and rivers, and the trees and forests are all at one time wiped out, when great winds come out of season, and when black winds, red winds, green winds, heavenly winds, earthly winds, fire winds, and water winds blow. When prodigies of this kind occur, this is the 5th disaster. Continuing on page 10, when heaven and earth, and we're halfway through this Go Show now, when heaven and earth and the whole country are stricken by terrible heat so that the air seems to be on fire, when the 100 plants wither and the 5 kinds of grain fail to ripen, when the earth is red and scorched and the inhabitants all perish, when prodigies of this kind occur, this is the 6th disaster. When enemies rise up on all 4 sides and invade the nation, when rebels appear in the capital and the outlying regions, when there are 5 bandits, fire bandits, water bandits, wind bandits, and demon bandits, and the population is subjected to devastation and disorder, and fighting and plundering break out everywhere, when prodigies of this type occur, this is the 7th disaster. The Great Collection Sutra says, though for countless existences in the past the ruler of a state may have practiced the giving of alms, observed the precepts, and cultivated wisdom, if he sees that my teaching is in danger of perishing and stands idly by without doing anything to protect it, then all the inestimable roots of goodness that he has planted through the practices just mentioned will be entirely wiped out, and his country will become the scene of 3 inauspicious occurrences. The first is high grain prices, the second is warfare, the third is epidemics. All the benevolent deities will abandon the country, and although the ruler may issue commands, the people will not obey them. The country will constantly be invaded and vexed by neighboring nations. Violent fires will rage out of control. Fierce winds and rains will abound, and waters will swell and overflow. And the inhabitants will be blown about by winds or swept away by floods. The paternal and maternal relatives of the ruler will join in plotting revolt. Before long, the ruler will fall gravely ill, and after his life has come to an end, he will be reborn in the great hell. And the same fate will befall the ruler's consort, his heir, the high ministers of the state, the lords of the cities, the heads of the village heads, and the generals, the magistrates of districts, and other officials. The passages I have quoted from these 4 sutras are perfectly clear. What person in 10,000 could possibly doubt their meaning? And yet, the blind and deluded recklessly distrust the distorted doctrines and fail to recognize the correct teaching. Therefore, throughout the empire these days, people are inclined to turn away from the Buddhas and the sutras and no longer endeavor to protect them. Because of this, the benevolent deities and sages abandon the nation and leave their accustomed places. As a result, demons and even spirits bring about disasters and cause calamities. So now the guest has the gist of where he's coming from. Okay? Now that he's getting a little pissed off, the guest. So I'm going to read one more question and answer here. He says, the guest thereupon flushed with anger and said, Emperor Ming of the later Han dynasty, having comprehended the significance of his dream of a golden man, welcomed the teachings of Buddhism brought by white horses. Prince Jogu, having put down the rebellion of Maurya, the opponent of Buddhism, proceeded to construct temples and pagodas. Since that time, from the ruler on down to the common people, all have worshipped the Buddha images and devoted their attention to the scriptures. As a result, in the monasteries of Mount Hei and the southern capital of Nara, at the temple of Onoji and Toji, throughout the land bounded by the 4 seas, in the 5 provinces of the capital area, and along the 7 marches, Buddha images and Buddhist scriptures have been ranged like stars in the sky, and halls of worship have spread like clouds. Those who belong to the lineage of Shariputra meditate on the moon atop Eagle Peak, while those who adhere to the traditions of Haklashayas transmit the teachings of Mount Kukutapata. How then can anyone say that the teachings of the Buddha's lifetime are despised, or that the 3 treasures of Buddhism have ceased to exist? If there is evidence to support such a contention, I would like to hear all the facts. The guest, the host, anxious to clarify his words, replied, this is the 3rd answer, to be sure, Buddhist halls stand at rooftop to rooftop, and sutra storehouses are ranged eave to eave. Priests are as numerous as bamboo plants and rushes. Monks as common as rice and hemp seedlings. The temples and priests have been honored from centuries past, and every day respect is paid them anew. But the monks and priests today are fawning and devious. They're in it for the money. They're in it for themselves. And they confuse the people and lead them astray. The ruler and his subject lack understanding and fail to distinguish between what is correct and what is erroneous. They don't know. The Benevolent King Sutra, for example, says evil monks hoping to gain fame and profit in many cases appear before the ruler, the crown prince, or other princes, and take it upon themselves to preach doctrines that lead to the violation of the Buddhist law and the destruction of the nation. The ruler, failing to perceive the truth of the situation, listens to and puts faith in such doctrines and proceeds to create regulations that are perverse in nature and do not accord with the rules of Buddhist practice. In this way, he brings about the destruction of Buddhism and of the nation. The Nirvana Sutra states, Bodhisattvas have no fear of mad elephants. What you should fear are evil friends. Even if you are killed by a mad elephant, you will not fall into the 3 evil paths. But if you are killed by an evil friend, you are certain to fall into them. The Lotus Sutra says at the top of page 11, in that evil age there will be monks with perverse wisdom and hearts that are fawning and crooked, and will suppose they have attained what they have not attained. being proud and boastful in heart. Or there will be forest-dwelling monks wearing clothing of patched rags and living in retirement who will claim they are practicing the true way, despising and looking down on humankind. Greedy for profit and support, they will preach the law to white-robed laymen and will be respected and revered by the world as though they were arhats who possess the 6 transcendental powers. Because in the midst of the great assembly they constitute, they constantly try to defame us. They will address the rulers, high ministers, Brahmins, householders, as well as other monks, slandering and speaking evil of us, saying, "These are men of perverted views who preach non-Buddhist doctrines. In a muddied kalpa, in an evil age, there will be many things to fear. Evil demons will take possession of others, and through them curse, revile, and heap shame on us. The evil monks of that muddied age, failing to understand the Buddha's expedient means, how he preaches the law in accordance with what is appropriate, will confront us with foul language and angry frowns. Again and again we will be banished." You guys know which chapter that's from? Huh? I think it's encouraging devotion. It's from chapter 13. Okay. That's the 20-line verse. He just basically said the 20-line verse, 20 verse line, whatever it is, right? He said, "The evil monks of that muddied age, failing to understand the Buddha's expedient means, how he preaches the law in accordance with what is appropriate for the age, for the time, will confront us with foul language and angry frowns. Again and again we will be banished." The Nirvana Sutra says, "After I have passed away and countless hundreds of years have gone by, the sages of the 4 stages, too, will all have passed away. After the former day of the law is ended and the middle day of the law is begun, there will be monks who will give the appearance of abiding by the rules of monastic discipline, but they will scarcely ever read or recite the sutras, and instead will crave all kinds of food and drink to nourish their bodies. Though they wear the clothes of a monk, they will go about searching for alms like so many huntsmen who, narrowing their eyes, stalk softly. They will be like a cat on the prowl for mice, and they will constantly reiterate these words, 'I have attained arhatship.' Outwardly they will seem to be wise and good, but within they will harbor greed and jealousy. And when they are asked to preach these teachings, they will say nothing, like Brahmins who have taken a vow of silence. They are not true monks. They merely have the appearance of monks. Consumed by their erroneous views, they slander the correct teaching. When we look at the world in the light of these passages of scriptures, we see that the situation is just as they describe it. If we do not admonish the evil priests, how can we hope to do good?" Question 4. The guest, growing more indignant than ever, said, "A wise monarch, by acting in accord with heaven and earth, perfects his rule. A sage, by distinguishing between right and wrong, brings order to the world. The monks and priests of the world today enjoy the confidence of the entire empire. If they were in fact evil monks, then the wise ruler would put no trust in them. If they were not true sages, then worthies and learned persons would not look up to them. But now, since worthies and sages do in fact honor and respect them, they must be nothing less than paragons of their kind. Why do you pour out these wild accusations and dare to slander them? To whom are you referring when you speak of evil monks? I would like an explanation." And I'm going to go ahead and do 4. Answer 4. The host said, page 12, last paragraph, first column. The host said, "In the time of the retired Emperor Gotoba, there was a priest named Honen who wrote a work entitled The Nimbutsu Chosen Above All. He contradicted the sacred teachings of the Buddha's entire lifetime and brought confusion to people in every direction. Nimbutsu Chosen Above All, regarding the passage in which the medicine master Tao Cho distinguished between the sacred way teachings and the Pure Land teachings and urged people to abandon the former and immediately embrace the latter. First of all, there are 2 kinds of sacred way teachings, the Mahayana and the Hinayana. Judging from this, we may assume that the esoteric Mahayana sutras and the true Mahayana teachings are both included in the sacred way. If that is so, then the 8 present-day schools, the true word, Zen, Tendai, flower garland, 3 treatises, Dharma characteristics, treat on the 10 stages sutras, and the summary of the Mahayana are all included in the sacred way that is to be abandoned. The Dharma teacher Tuan Luan, in his ceremony on the treatise on the rebirth of the Pure Land, states, I note that Bodhisattva Nagarjuna's commentary on the 10 stages sutra states, or says, there are 2 ways by which a bodhisattva may reach the state of avarivitika, or non-retrogression. One is the difficult to practice way, the other is the easy to practice way. The difficult to practice way is the same as the sacred way teachings, and the easy to practice way is the Pure Land teachings. Students of the Pure Land school should first of all understand this point. Though they may be people, okay, when he's talking about Amida, right? He's talking about Pure Land. He's talking about Nimbutsu. That's what Pure Land is. Students of the Pure Land school should first of all understand this point. Though they may be people who have previously studied the Sacred Way teachings, if they wish to become followers of the Pure Land teachings, they must discard the Sacred Way and give their allegiance to the Pure Land teachings. Honen also says, regarding the passage in which Reverend Shantao distinguished between correct and sundry practices and urges people to abandon the sundry and embrace the correct, concerning the first of the sundry practices, that of reading and reciting sutras, and with the exception of the recitation of the meditation on the infinite life sutra, and the other sutras that preach rebirth in the Pure Land, and embracing, reading, and recitation of all other sutras, whether Mahayana or Hinayana, esoteric or esoteric, is to be regarded as a sundry practice. Concerning the third kind of sundry practice is that of worshiping, with the exception of worshiping the Buddha Amida, the worshiping or honoring of other Buddhas or Bodhisattvas or a deity of this world is to be regarded as a sundry practice. In light of this statement, I declare that one should abandon such sundry practices and concentrate upon the practice of the Pure Land teachings. What reason would we have to abandon the correct practices of the Pure Land teaching, which ensure that out of 100 persons, all 100 will be reborn in the Pure Land and cling instead to the various sundry practices and procedures, and which could not save even one person in a thousand. Followers of the way should ponder this carefully. This is all Pure Land doctrine. Amida, Honen, the chief propagator of this misunderstanding, as I'm saying it, I'm telling you, this is all a misunderstanding. The Daishonin is declaring this a misunderstanding. Honen further states, the Qin Yuan era catalog of the Buddhist canon, we find it recorded that from the 600 volumes of the Great Wisdom Sutra to the Eternity of the Law Sutra, the exoteric and esoteric sutras of Mahayana, or the Great Vehicle, total 637 works in 2,883 volumes. The phrase from the Meditation Sutra, reading and reciting the Great Vehicle, should be applied to all these works. You should understand that when the Buddha was preaching according to the capacity of his various listeners, he for the first time taught the 2 methods of concentrated meditation and unconcentrated meditation. But later, when he revealed his own enlightenment, he ceased to teach these 2 methods. The only teaching that once revealed shall never cease. The only teaching that once revealed shall never cease to be taught is the single doctrine of Nimbutsu. Honen also states, regarding the passage that says the practitioners of the Nimbutsu must possess 3 kinds of mind, it is found in the Meditation Sutra. In his commentary on that sutra, Shantao says, someone may ask if there are those who differ in understanding and practice from the followers of Nimbutsu, persons of distorted and mistaken beliefs. How should we confront them? I will now make certain that their perverse and differing views will not cause trouble. Those persons of evil views with different understanding and different practices are compared to a band of robbers who call back the traveler who has already gone 1 or 2 steps along his journey. In my opinion, when this commentary speaks out of different understanding, different practices, different doctrines, and different beliefs, they are referring to the teachings of the Sacred Way. Finally, in a concluding passage, Honen says, if one wishes to escape quickly from the sufferings of birth and death, one should confront of these. Pardon me. If one wishes to escape quickly from the sufferings of birth and death, one should confront these two superior teachings and then proceed to put aside the teachings of the sacred way and choose those of the Pure Land, which is to do nothing but Namu Amida Butsu. And if one teaches, and if one wishes to follow the teachings of the Pure Land, which that is it, one should confront the correct and sundry practices and then proceed to abandon all the sundry and devote one's entire attention to the correct. When we examine these passages, the host says, we see that Honen quotes the erroneous explanations of Tan Luan, Tao Chou, Shan Tao, and establishes the categories of the sacred way in the Pure Land teachings and of the difficult and easy to practice ways. He then takes all 637 works in 2,883 volumes that comprise the Mahayana teachings of the Buddha's lifetime, including those of the Lotus Sutra and the True Words Sutras, along with the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and the deities of this world, and assigns them to the categories of the sacred way, the difficult to way practice, and the sundry practices, and urges people to discard, close, ignore, and abandon them. With these four injunctions, he leads all people astray. On top of that, he groups together all the sage monks of the three countries of India, China, and Japan, as well as the students of Buddhism of the 10 directions, and calls them bands of robbers, causing the people to insult them. In doing so, he turns his back on the passage of the three Pure Land Sutras, of his own school, which contains Amida's vow to save the people, accepting only those who commit the 5 cardinal sins and those who slander the correct teaching. More fundamentally, he shows that he fails to understand the warning contained in the 2nd volume of the Lotus Sutra, the heart and core of the entire body of the teachings of the Buddha expounded in the 5 periods, and of his preaching life, which reads, if a person fails to have faith but instead slanders this sutra, when his life comes to an end, he will enter the Avicii hell. Now we have come to this latter age when people are no longer sages. Each enters his own dark road, and all alike forget the direct way. How pitiful that no one cures them of their blindness. How painful to see them taking up these beliefs in vain. As a result, everyone from the ruler of the nation on down to the common people believes there are no true sutras outside the 3 Pure Land Sutras, and no Buddhas other than the Buddha Amida with his 2 attendants. Once there were men like Dengyo, Gishin, Jikaku, and Chisho who journeyed to 10,000 miles across the waves to China to acquire the sacred teachings, and there visited the mountains and rivers to pay reverence to Buddhist statues and carry them back. In some cases, they built holy temples on the peaks of high mountains in which to preserve those scriptures and statues in. In other cases, they constructed sacred halls in the bottoms of deep valleys where such objects could be worshipped and honored. As a result, the Buddhist Shakyamuni and medicine masters shone side by side, casting their influence upon present and future ages, upon Bodhisattva's space treasury and earth repository, brought benefit to the living and the dead. The rulers of the nation contributed districts or villages so that the lamps might continue to burn bright before the images of, while the stewards of the great estates gave their fields and gardens as offerings. But because of this book by Honen, this Nimbutsu chosen above all, the Lord of Teaching, Shakyamuni, is forgiven, and all honor is paid to Amida, is forgotten, and all honor is paid to Amida, the Buddha of the Western world. The transmission of the law from Shakyamuni Buddha is ignored. The meditation master and the thus come one of the eastern region is neglected. Attention is paid only to the 3 Pure Land Sutras in 4 volumes and all the other wonderful sutras that Shakyamuni expounded throughout the 5 periods of his own preaching life are cast aside. If temples are not dedicated to Amida, then people no longer have any desire to support them or pay honor to the Buddha enshrined there. If priests are not practitioners of the Nimbutsu, then people quickly forget all about giving those priests alms. As a result, the halls of the Buddha have fallen into ruin, scarcely a wisp of smoke rising above their moss-covered tile roofs, and the priests' quarters have become empty and dilapidated. The dew deep on the grasses in their courtyards, and in spite of such conditions, No one gives a thought to protecting the law or to restoring these temples. Hence, the sage priests who once presided over the temples leave and do not return, and the benevolent deities who guarded the nation depart and no longer appear. This has all come about because of this Nimbutsu chosen above all by Honen. How pitiful to think that in the space of a few decades, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of people in just a few decades have been deluded by devilish teachings and in so many cases confused as to the true teachings of Buddhism. If people favor what is incidental and forget what is primary, can the benevolent deities be anything but angry? If people cast aside what is perfect and take up what is biased, can the world escape the plots of demons? Rather than offering up 10,000 prayers for remedy, it would be better simply to outlaw this one evil. And he's talking about Nimbutsu. Okay, and I'll continue with the rest of it when we see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you.